What exactly is the likely outcome of the Irish border negotiations between Theresa May and the EU negotiating team? Phillipe Lamberts sits on the Brexit Steering Group of the European Parliament and was one of the people who sat down with the EU chief negotiator, Mr Barnier, and Commission President, Mr Juncker, to talk over the draft Brexit agreement a couple of days ago. Phillipe, now one of the things that have come out from the whole media furore, and particularly to do with the DUP and Theresa May, was that the DUP is saying there is radical work that needs to be done on this joint text that was proposed on Monday. In terms of time, is there any practical way there could be a serious rewrite of that text for next week for sufficient progress to be confirmed?
Well, I understand that for Arlene Foster and the DUP, they need radical changes. Now, these changes are not difficult to make in terms of writing them, but it's a complete reversal of a policy choice. So basically, this is a trilemma. The United Kingdom wants to get out of the single market and customs union. The Northern Ireland doesn't want to be separate from the rest of the United Kingdom. And the Republic of Ireland will stay in the single market. And the Good Friday Agreement says you cannot have a border there. So there's, well, something is to give. Something is to give. So either you have a border, because there will be divergence, regulatory divergence, which means that either the border will be on the island of Ireland or in the Irish Sea, or you have no divergence. But that means that then the United Kingdom stays in the single market and customs union, and Theresa May has to make a U-turn. So something will have to give.
I just want to pick up on what you heard from this Brexit meeting with Mr Barnier, Mr Juncker, with regards to this agreement, because there's some confusion, I think, in the UK regarding this. Was the message that Theresa May and the UK government had confirmed and were happy with the text that you were reading through on Monday? There'd been a clear statement of we agree with this to take it forward.
To put it more precisely, there was all confidence that indeed the lunch would confirm that the text was agreeable to the British negotiators. But we had to expect, of course, the word of the British Prime Minister on this. Because, well, you can negotiate stuff at staff level, but it's only when the leaders are, well, sanctioning the agreement that it is an agreement. So, but the general expectation was that, yes, the British government and the Irish government would concur with the wording that was on the table.
And just picking up on the word of Theresa May, was there any confirmation, or did you talk about any confirmation from the DUP, obviously the Conservatives' partner in government effectively, that the DUP had approved of this? Did the UK government or Theresa May say the DUP will be happy with this?
I didn't talk with the British negotiators, but anyway, we only know one authority in the United Kingdom, and that's the government. And we are not speaking with the DUP. The DUP supports the government or not, but that's basically the internal business of Theresa May's coalition, and we are not meddling into that.
Now, you quoted as saying Britain has accepted the reality of their situation. Yeah. What did you mean by that?
That you can't have a border and not have a border. I mean, you can't at the same time take Northern Ireland out of the single market and not have a border. So if you take Northern Ireland out of the single market, that means a border. And the Good Friday Agreement says no border. This is an inherent contradiction in the UK's government position. So they have to come to terms with reality and solve this contradiction one way or the other.
Isn't the reality of this situation, because of the political sensitivity surrounding that border in particular, there has to be good faith and room to cooperate on both sides, the EU and the UK side, in order to ensure that there is a very much bespoke special agreement regarding that border? Because what you said there is very binary. You can either have or you cannot have.
Yeah, but that's a reality. I mean, either goods, services, people and money can cross the border with no encumbrance, or they can't. But
what about technology, though? There's a lot being said about
But it's not about technology. I mean, that means controls.
In terms of a
that means controls. But even if controls are electronic, and even if controls are not made on 100% of the goods and services that cross the border, controls there will be. It's either you have controls or you don't. So it's not about queues at the border. It's about having a border or not having a border.
Can I just pick up on what David Davis said in an urgent question yesterday? He said the presumption of the discussion on regulatory alignment with the EU in key areas was that everything we talked about applied to the whole of the UK. And
that's good.
And I think it is sometimes having mutually recognised rules, mutually recognised inspection. That's what I'm aiming at. And this whole idea of key areas that there can be in certain areas, so particularly for the Northern Ireland.
I'm afraid to say I don't agree
with
Mr. Davis, because that presumes that basically the UK and the EU27 would converge towards some middle ground. No, we have a body of legislation which is a single market.
But that's surely a negotiation converging towards a middle ground, particularly on an issue like
Sorry,
Ireland.
that's for the future status, but at the moment we're negotiating a divorce. The United Kingdom knowingly decided to leave something they know, and there's no reason why the 27 should change because the UK is leaving.
Well, for the sake of stability in Ireland and Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I value stability, but then again...
But not as much.
Yeah, but again, I mean, this is
an
asymmetrical situation. It's the United Kingdom that decided to leave. It was not a joint decision to to part ways. It was the United Kingdom's sovereign decision to say, okay,
but
we're done with this.
Does that mean the EU can abdicate any responsibility for the peace and security of the Northern Irish border?
No, we do have responsibility, but there's one way to solve this. So I think that the Europeans would be happy to keep the Northern Ireland within the single market, which to me is already a concession because, well, the Northern Ireland would belong to a third country, and accepting a part of a third country within the single market is already a very big concession. But so I think that this could be a workable solution. Now, of course, it becomes easier if the United Kingdom as a whole says, okay, we stay in, and that's a Norwegian solution. I'm sure that the EU27 would be prepared to entertain that option as well. But again, it's for the British government to decide where they want to stand on this.
In terms of the timeline, is there any likelihood that sufficient progress can be approved by the EU27 without an agreement on that border?
No. No, because
so even if there was
you need
more time.
No, you need guarantees, and again, we are confronting a British government that has put itself in a bind. I mean, it is a guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement.
This is a bind which the EU is also forcing upon it by saying you can either have this or that, and there is no compromise in the middle.
I mean, that's just law. I mean, you can't be half pregnant. I mean, either you are or you aren't. But here, it's a case where you have rules, you have treaties, you have the EU treaty, you have the Good Friday Agreement. These exist.
Which is all on the negotiating table to ensure that there is an agreement which is satisfactory for peace and stability.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, the UK wants divergence from the EU rules. That is a stated goal of Brexit. If you want to diverge, you have to recognize that the rules won't be the same on either side of the border, which means then, if goods and services and people cross this border, well, controls will need to be made.
Can I just go back to this key areas notion that there is going to be some kind of alignment, regulatory alignment, or at least the UK seems to be pushing this idea that they're going to have some kind of regulatory alignment with the EU on certain key areas and certain key sectors. So in Northern Ireland, that might be energy, that might be agriculture, things. Is that a possible outcome where you don't take the whole package, but you say we have it?
That is my reading, exactly. And this is why I think that the reading that is on the table was acceptable for the British negotiators, because indeed it does not say Northern Ireland will remain in the single market. It says in a much more carefully crafted way that there will be full alignment in the areas of single market and customs union regulations that are relevant to having a border or not. So, indeed, it opens the door, and again, that is a concession from the Europeans, to be very specific as to what you need to align with in order to allow, well, to avoid the border. So we can try to be smart, but we can't ignore the fact that whenever regulations diverge in these areas, you will have a border. So if the British negotiators are prepared to accept that in every area where you need alignment, we will have alignment, then it's okay.
Do you think that in all likelihood what's going to happen is that the UK is going to remain part of the single market and customs union because it's just too difficult to find a solution, particularly to do with that?
If you look at...
Is that the mood, that the momentum is moving towards that way?
Well, I hear more and more voices in the United Kingdom saying that.
What about in let's say, the Brexit Steering Group? When you get fed through the negotiations, when you hear from the mood in the European Parliament, in the Commission, is there a feeling that this is suddenly starting to move more towards actually maybe single market and customs union membership?
Let me say that we're negotiating in good faith. In other terms, if the British government wants to get out of single market and customs union and all the rest of it, then of course it creates for itself difficulties, but we will negotiate on that basis. Now, if the United Kingdom government changes its mind and says, okay, we want to stay in, we're open to that as well. But then again, I'm looking at it from a democratic angle. The Norwegian option is practical, it is relatively easy, but democratically, do you want to be a rule taker without sitting at the table where these rules are determined? So if you're totally logical in a democratic logic, then you want to be a member. And that basically questions Brexit.
Okay. One final question then. Theresa May, you've been on this programme before and have said, you know, not particularly complimentary things about her leadership. What's your view now, just very briefly?
Well, it has not improved. In other terms, but that's a big if. Again, I was not in the negotiation. So if her negotiators conceded the wording that was on the table and agreed to it, and she had not made sure to have a coalition, a majority on board, that's a grave mistake, I think. Now, and well, we are where we are.
Has it undermined her as you know, the figurehead of these negotiations? Is it, are the Commission and Mr. Barnier looking at her going, what is
again,
going
it's not for us to decide who the British government puts in front of us. And as long as Theresa May is Prime Minister, I mean, as long as she's Prime Minister, she's a legitimate representative of the United Kingdom, and we will talk with her. So we have nothing to say about her internal credibility. But frankly speaking, I would have hoped that we could have concluded on Monday. And that was my sincere hope. And I'm on record saying that all these agreements that the United Kingdom government has given on citizens' rights, on the financial commitments, and possibly on Ireland, could have been made in October. And we wasted 2 precious months. Now, what I don't want is that we waste another 3 months until the March Council, because, I mean, the clock is ticking and it's in everyone's best interest, and I want to be very clear on that. It's in everyone's interest, including the EU27, to discuss our future relationship, because we all have to lose not having a good relationship moving forward, because the UK will remain where it is. You know, geographically, it's very close and it's a big nation.